Welcome to Breaking Banks.
Machine learning is used for everything from economic decision-making to lending decisions to employee selection, and it's only becoming more prevalent in the digital age. AI and algorithmic models are increasingly surfacing as the subject of intense policy debates surrounding the legality of and liability for these advanced machine learning applications. According to new McKinsey Global Institute report, by the year 2030, about 800 million people will lose their jobs to AI-driven robots. In 2016, Microsoft's AI chatbot Tay had to be shut down in less than a day due to the information it was receiving and learning from other Twitter users. The robot learned to spew racist slurs and Nazi propaganda. Alfred Cowger joins me today. He's someone I've known for many years now. He's an attorney, an activist, and an author of The Threats of Algorithms and AI to Civil Rights, Legal Remedies, and American Jurisprudence, One Nation Under Algorithms. Welcome to the show, Al. Why did you write this book?
Well, I've always had an interest in the juxtaposition between high tech and computer science and the law. Back in the days when I was in law school and lawyers didn't use computers, nonetheless, I was a co-founder of the computer law forum at school. Over the years, I've watched as technology has evolved and improved. More recently, I got involved with discussions on the legal ramifications and ethics involving algorithm and AI-driven products when those products harm people. That resulted in a law review article I wrote, but then that got me to thinking about how are algorithms and AI going to affect American jurisprudence on a whole variety of issues, including fiduciary duty, professional responsibility, professional liability, those sorts of legal questions.
Well, maybe let's start with some of those damages. What are some of the ways that algorithms are hurting people?
Well, first of all, let me say that algorithms are great technology. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying let's never, ever go use algorithms, but algorithms can and will hurt people. Part of it is because algorithms are dependent on how good the designer is. And an algorithm designer either is going to have to also be an expert in all the fields that person is designing in or have the expertise available. And if the manufacturers of those algorithms start cutting corners, you end up with the same product that other product problems that other manufacturers have when they start cutting corners. So algorithms will never be perfectly accurate. So what happens when they're only 66% accurate and they cause harm to 33% of the population? Algorithms also machine learn. They teach themselves how to be better, to make better decisions, to make better correlations, to do things more efficiently with data. The problem there is, in the effort to be more efficient, algorithms pick up on historical instances of discrimination in the databases they're using. So the quickest way to make a decision is to make it based upon prejudice and bigotry. And those algorithms will pick up on those historic instances. So algorithms tend to discriminate. So people can be harmed by an algorithmic process. And then to add the one more layer, algorithms work in what Professor Pasquale, Frank Pasquale has called a black box. You never know what data the algorithm will use. You never know how they make those correlations. So if somebody's harmed by an algorithm, they don't even know why they were harmed or what they can protest about.
What's an example of somebody that's been harmed that has then tried to test the legal system with it?
I will give you two cases that actually were recently reported by NBC. One was a Navy officer with high security clearance that tried to get a mortgage, and he was denied the mortgage because his name, which happened to be a Hispanic last name, was similar to a low-level Mexican drug dealer that algorithm happened to find somehow and made the conclusion that the two were one and the same people. Not only was that person denied a mortgage based upon their Hispanic last name, but they are now concerned that mortgage denial will leak into their security clearance and they could lose their job with the Navy. Another example, an individual applied for, in this case may actually be going to the Supreme Court, the individual applied for a car loan. Under the Patriot Act, the bank was required to make sure that that person was not on the terrorist watch list. And lo and behold, that person's name or something similar showed up on the watch list. And so they were denied a car loan. But now they've been red flagged to be denied any business transaction with most companies in America. I've heard the stories in the past about everybody from senators to toddlers being on that no-fly list. It was thrown together quickly after 9/11. It's never been vetted well or fixed up. And yet this is a database that is being used by financial institutions to make credit decisions.
Well, and as you say, you can't sue the algorithm, right? So who gets sued in these cases?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because for people who are using these algorithms, you have two concerns. On one hand, as the industries, say the fintech industry, uses more and more algorithms, you will be held to an industry standard that says you must use these algorithms. If you do it the old-fashioned way, you're in trouble. But the flip side is you're relying upon a technology that, because of this black box tendency, the non-transparency of algorithmic processes, you never know how it is working and how it reached the conclusion that is telling you to use. So you as the expert, or you as the financial advisor, or you as the officer of your company that owes an obligation to your shareholders, how can you say that you're making the right decision based upon an algorithm that you don't even understand how it reached that process? So it's a double-edged sword. You're supposed to be using this technology, but you're using a technology that you can't understand, yet you're supposed to be able to explain why you made your decision.
Mm. Well, and this kind of, as you've written about, runs afoul of the fiduciary duty, right?
Right, because those who are providing financial advice or managing money or other property for third parties, such as financial advisors and stockbrokers and that sort of thing, but also those who are officers and senior managers of their company that are in essence running the company for their shareholders and therefore have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. In both instances, if you're going to use an algorithm that makes financial decisions or business decisions, let's say you bought an algorithm that claims to look at your future of your company and know what new product lines to go into or what strategic plans to adopt. If you don't know how that algorithm is working and you don't know what database that algorithm used, you could be drawing conclusions that if you're sued by a shareholder, for example, who says, well, Mr. Director, how did you come up with that decision? Mr. CEO, why did you take the company down that road? You're going to say, well, I based upon this algorithm. And they say, and why? And you're going to say, because I was told this was a good algorithm. That's your best answer. Well, that's not fulfilling your fiduciary duty to use your own expertise, your own judgment to come up with these financial decisions.
Mm. So beyond just tort law and fiduciary duty, I mean, you have broader concerns too. I mean, you actually say that you're worried about how AI is eroding privacy, and you think that has implications on our Fourth Amendment rights in the U.S.
Yes, because there's a longstanding Supreme Court ruling that when one's personal records, personal information is held by third parties, you don't have the same expectation of privacy, the same right to complain if the government, let's say, subpoenas that third party. That's why for years the government has gone to tax dodgers' accountants to get the information rather than asking for the information directly from the tax dodger. Well, if all of our information now is stored in the cloud, for example, does that mean we have any expectation of privacy for any information, going right down to the most fundamental aspects of the medical treatments we receive, the financial decisions we make? So there's that simple but fundamental question of, in the age of high tech and where algorithms are making these decisions and have access to all this data, what right of privacy should we have? And then you go one step further. in order to use these algorithms and the products that use the algorithms and artificial intelligence, we end up giving away so much of our private information that we as individuals, consumers or citizens, or even businesses, end up giving away far more information than we may otherwise think we want to, because we think, oh, if I tell Alexa what my grocery list is and they place the order with the grocery store, how convenient is that? Well, we forget that now Alexa's owners, the grocery store, and anybody that contracted to buy that information from both of these parties can now get all that information about how do we spend our money? What do we buy? What consumer choices are we making that we may not want other parties to know about? I will give you a perfect example, very quickly. When people have had to sign up for the COVID vaccination at chain drugstores or grocery stores, they're being required to sign up via the customer loyalty programs. These chains say, well, that's because then you'll be on our emailing list and it's easier to tell you when the vaccination is available. But I've looked at some of these terms of use, and they actually say, once you sign up, all the information you're providing to us, we will provide to third parties. Well, you're signing up with your name, your age, your gender, your address, because that's what qualifies you to get these various stages of COVID vaccinations. But do you want that information to be just sold to whomever, so that they have all this information about your background and it's being sold to people you don't even know it's being sold to, and you had to do that to get a vaccination?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask, is that I was going to joke, well, it's okay, Al, because they've signed the end user license agreement. Therefore, they've given all permission. But let's be honest, most of us don't know what we've signed. We see 4 or 5 screens full of data and we skim through it and click agree because we want to do whatever we want the app to do for us.
Right. And let's face it, there are lawyers who are very skilled at making convoluted end user agreements, so we don't even know what our rights or what we've given up in terms of rights might be.
Well, so what advice do you have for people? I mean, I think of this at 3 levels. One is just the consumer. Some of the examples you gave there, I think about myself and others that I know just as a consumer. Secondly is technology-driven, Fintech and other tech companies that are kind of building and using these algorithms. And then third is the traditional financial institutions, which are increasingly relying on these things. Let's take those one at a time. Let's just start with the consumers. I mean, what kind of advice do you give consumers about protecting their privacy in the age of algorithms?
Well, it's very hard for a consumer to protect themselves right now. Europe, for example, has far broader and stronger protections of privacy and what goes into databases and how they can use that information than the US.
And the right to be forgotten.
Exactly, yes.
Those.
So you have frozen up. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me, JP? Okay. So
yeah, you froze for a second there, but
yeah.
Go ahead and pick it up after my additional comment on Germany.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. So okay. So the
consumer I was just saying. Yeah, the right to be forgotten in Germany and some of the other countries, right?
And the EU in general. That's right. So that if somebody has made a mistake or you have data that could hurt you forever, you have a right for various grounds to have that data removed to the extent possible. In the US, we don't have that right. So that means that we have to be doubly careful about what information we give out. For example, people don't realize that every time you're on a social media site and there's those silly quizzes about what sort of former monarch would you have been, answer these 20 questions. Well, that's collecting all sorts of information about you that goes into databases for marketing. And algorithms are really, really good at taking all those disparate surveys and add that to the disparate people who respond to those surveys and talk to each other to create massive information about every individual for marketing purposes, for demographic purposes. I mean, in the UK, the Brexit election, it turned out was swayed by people who created a fake lottery for the English football, soccer tournaments. And when people answered those questions to enter that lottery, all this demographic information became available to the campaigners against Brexit, and that was used to aim very targeted campaign ads to these people, and that swayed the election.
It's probably the Arsenal supporters. Yeah.
Yes, never Manchester United, ever. No, so anyway, the problem is, so the issue with consumers is be very careful about even the most innocuous release of information. And that even includes bringing in Alexa and all these other products that track your needs, your wants, your desires within your own home. Because all that can eventually create a database about you, about your connections to other people, about your consumer choices, about your very fundamental decisions on medicine and everything else that you may not want to be used against you or about you, and you have no control over that, at least in the US. So we should be lobbying our elected officials to pass laws that are more like in the EU, or California, for example. There was a law recently passed there.
Right.
But we should also be much more diligent about giving all this information about ourselves away for free to these giant big data users.
Well, how about on the flip side? What if you're a tech company or a fintech company and you're wanting to gather all this information because you're trying to create better products and better experiences for customers, and the more data you have, the better. What's the best way to manage these responsibly?
Well, I think you have to, at all times, just like a buyer of any other product, keep in mind the limitations of that product, despite the advertising, the marketing, the way it's being sold to you. So there are limitations to how good an algorithm or AI product can be designed. And you have to make sure that you are getting a product designed for your needs, not one that's off the shelf, so to speak, and is just being shoehorned into what you want. Because especially with algorithms, where how they make correlations to the databases available to them is fundamental to how successful they are or how accurate they are. If you buy an algorithm that doesn't draw the correlations you want based upon the data you have available, you can come up with some very bad decisions. Also, anybody that's using an algorithm, whether you're a doctor or a fintech person or just an executive of a company, needs to remember that algorithms should not replace humans. They should complement humans. Humans have skills that algorithms never will, including just being able to say, that doesn't make any sense. So we as humans should not look at algorithms as divine oracles that we just defer all decision-making to. We have to continue to make sure humans play a fundamental and probably the ultimate final decision in that decision-making process. And then last but not least, we have to make sure that we are buying products that are transparent enough or can be adjudged by, for example, other algorithms, to make sure that those algorithms, those products are being constantly tested to make sure that they have not machined themselves into a discriminatory process or a gender-based process. And that's whether you're trying to make credit decisions as a fintech person, or you're just trying to run a company and hire somebody from a diverse employee base.
Well, and you've talked about, if you're a traditional financial service company, a bank or credit union, so on, you have even a higher level of care, not only because of fiduciary duty, but because of the regulatory burden on this. Talk about how banks and credit unions should think about all of this.
Well, it's somewhat well, irony may be the wrong word, but it's interesting that because fintech industry is more highly regulated, banking and financial advice and stockbrokers are more regulated than, let's say, a general manufacturer of a product, consumer product. That means that there are laws and regulations in writing that can be used to challenge or to find fault in algorithms and AI processes. So the industries that are more regulated will be more likely to face challenges based upon these regulations when they adopt AI and algorithms that seem to violate these regulations. An algorithm that makes a credit decision and makes one that ultimately is based upon one's gender, race, religion, national origin, neighborhood for redlining purposes, for example. Whereas one of the deficiencies with American jurisprudence that is getting worse by the day is if you're relying upon liability based upon what's called the common law, just the history of how courts have ruled and come up with cases that set standards of behavior and that sort of thing. That's all based upon human interaction, human liability, human responsibility for things that go wrong. Though the common law is not keeping up on what happens when humans are being replaced by algorithms in the decision-making process, even to the extent of driving your car, as opposed to the human driving the car. So those areas of liability are going to lag because the courts are not coming up with new common law to deal with algorithms and AI. So the areas of industry that will be most impacted by liability and regulatory issues will be those that are most highly regulated by written laws and statutes right now.
Well, and bankers are used to the concept of disparate impact, right? Even if we can't prove that why you did this wrong, we can look to parts of your customer base are impacted disproportionately, and therefore you have to make corrective action.
Correct. And it is a dangerous thing for any fintech person or financial person to say, my algorithm's using statistics to come up with the right answers, so I don't have to worry about the result of those statistics. You can try to say, I used an algorithm to make credit decisions to avoid discrimination. But if, once again, disparate impact can make those algorithm decisions just as bad, even if you claim you thought you were doing better. So yes, that is a concern to worry about.
Well, there's lots to worry about, and you've given me a whole list of new things. Where are the bright spots? What are you most optimistic about as you think about AI and algorithms and machine learning going forward?
Well, I think specifically anybody that needs to make a decision based upon data and correlations to be driven from that, obtained from that data, these are tools that will allow people to do their jobs far more efficiently and correctly than ever before. All these problems I'm talking about with inherent discriminatory features and non-transparency, we can develop the means to get by these issues and these deficiencies if we just, once again, don't look at algorithms as just a divine oracle that should not be questioned, but we should look at it as a product that can be improved. And the more we improve the product, the better it will be to help us in these decisions. And going a step back even more, it's going to be fascinating to see what role professionals and business managers play within their business organizations or for their clients in the future when we are not doing as much mundane topics as just crunching numbers. We are given the opportunity to it won't even be thinking outside of the box anymore because there won't be a box. So what can we do with that ability to think outside limited parameters, to no longer say, well, we can only do so much because we're human?
Right. Well, I mean, that's always been the promise of technology. Going back to the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, right? But we'll have these machines take these, crappy jobs away from us, and then we'll be able to just focus on better stuff. But a lot of what you talked about is a function of bias in, bias out. And so as I think about all of these concerns that you raise, what I think maybe I'm most optimistic about is what you just said about the ability to improve all this. Can we intentionally use broader sets of data? Can we represent people that maybe weren't represented in other databases? Can we have humans with a higher intent tweak and adjust these algorithms so that the technology not only does some of the crappy work for us, but it actually appeals to our better angels?
Well, I mean, a perfect example is giving credit to consumers. It used to be that credit agencies collected from a discrete number of sources, and the rationale was the person looking at the credit file to make the credit decision can't look at how the person has bought products from 500 different stores or borrowed money from both banks and their uncle.
Or paid utility bills on time for 20 years or rent or
right.
those sorts of things that may not show up on a traditional credit reporting structure.
Exactly. If you're living in the inner city where there are not traditional department stores and grocery stores, and you're buying things from a local barista or a mom and pop shop, then those proper uses of money, because you kept up your account or whatnot, would never show up on traditional credit scores. Now, there is the ability of credit agencies, if they design the algorithms correctly and they expand the databases to non-traditional sources of credit information, to allow people that were outside the mainstream of using credit to have their proper credit usage through these non-traditional venues recognized. And that means they will then be eligible for credit they could never get before. The problem is, once again, we have to always remember that those same credit algorithms can look at databases and make the same discriminatory decisions that were made in prior decades. And instead of saying, I'm not going to discriminate against this person because they're Black, we'll say, I'm not discriminating against this person because they're in this zip code. And why do people in that zip code not have good credit? Well, because they lived in a zip code that did not traditionally have credit or were denied credit. And the credit algorithm,
any number of structural impediments, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating topic, a little scary, but at the end of the day, I'm still hopeful that the technology can and will be used for a lot of good. Well, Al Cowger is the author of The Threats of Algorithms and AI to Civil Rights, Legal Remedies, and American Jurisprudence: One Nation Under Algorithms. Al, where can people find the book?
Ironically, online through Amazon.com.
Through an algorithm.
Yeah.
Just ask Alexa.
Yeah. Exactly. There you go. And of course, you can place the order with your traditional mom and pop bookstore, like any other book you might want to buy. So it's available through standard means. Great.
Anywhere you buy fine books today. Well, Al, thanks for joining us today and sharing some insights on this fascinating, if scary, topic.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Welcome to this special compilation of some of the best AI discussions we've had on Breaking Banks. We'll start with Greg Cross of Soul Machines and delve into how AI can be used for good and find out if digital humans are the answer. Then we go to AI and robots. Brett hosts Ben Goertzel, founder of Singularity, to learn about Sophia, the social humanoid robot, developed by Hong Kong-based company Hanson Robotics. And finally, we discuss Fintech and explore AI and consciousness with Byron Reese, author of The Fourth Age: Smart Robots, Conscious Computers, and the Future of Humanity.
Greg Cross is calling in all the way from Auckland in New Zealand. And he is the Chief Business Officer for Soul Machines. Now, I don't know whether you saw the news on this, but Soul Machines, they're developing a smart assistant, emotionally responsive avatars as a user interface for AI systems. And this is a University of Auckland spin-off based on BabyX technology created by Dr. Mark Sagard down there and his engineering team. What is interesting is that this tech that they've used for the voice, they've actually used a very famous actor to voice this smart assistant, Nadia, virtual assistant. So, Greg, are you there?
Yeah, I am, Brett. Good morning.
So what time is it over there in Auckland?
Just after 7 o'clock on Friday morning. So, in this part of the world, we can say, thank God it's Friday already.
Absolutely. Well, so tell me about Nadia and who is the voice actress you've used?
Yeah, so Nadia is a digital human that we've created specifically for the National Disability Insurance Association in Australia. And in creating Nadia and bringing her to life, we've actually been privileged to use the voice of Cate Blanchett.
Wow.
To be the interface for 500,000 disabled people with disability in Australia.
That's pretty crazy. So how did you get Cate Blanchett involved?
Actually, the folks from NDIA approached Cate. One of them had gone to school with Cate, so it always goes back to our childhood days some way, somehow. And Cate was only too happy to get engaged in this specific project, helping people with disability.
And what did you guys record it in a sound booth, or and how did you go through the process of creating the enough vocabulary that you could now have enough to power the virtual AI?
Yeah, to power Nadia. So the Mark, our inventor, and a couple of our sound team actually flew to the Gold Coast in Australia, where Cate was recording, was filming one of the productions she was in, and we spent Mark and a couple of our guys spent 2 or 3 late evenings recording Cate's voice, and then we set her up with a laptop and a microphone, and I think after Gold Coast she moved on to London, so she took that with her and continued recording the rest of what we required at that point in time. So there was 30 or 40 hours of time required to record Cate's voice, and then a few weeks of post-processing time for our technology guys to turn it into Nadia's voice and be able to produce all the content that we required for this particular digital employee.
Now, why was the technology called BabyX? I mean, I know the answer, but for the audience, why did you call the voice technology BabyX? Mark and the team, Mark came up with the name, BabyX, because it was the first generation of his digital babies. BabyX is actually based on the likeness of one of Mark's children. There you go. And how is this tech going to be used? You said it's going to be used to help those in the field of disability, but the National Disability Insurance Scheme specifically. But you've got emotionally responsive tech in this. What does that mean?
Yeah. So first off. The Nadia application or the Nadia avatar is really just the first of what will be, literally hundreds and hundreds of digital employees that we'll put to work for different companies and different industries around the world. So it really is just the first application. So the core of our technology is what we call our human computing engine. So behind the Nadia's pretty face and very lifelike behavior and features is what we call our human computing engine, which is effectively made up of biologically inspired models of different parts of the human brain. So, I mean, the reason Nadia behaves in a very human-like way is because we're actually she actually is seeing and hearing using many of the same sorts of systems or models of many of the same sorts of systems that we have as humans.
In terms of the algorithms or the software behind Sophia, describe the progress that's happened over the last couple of years in terms of her so-called cognitive capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, the cognitive capabilities are improving all the time. And I mean, we look at the Sophia robot internally as sort of a platform for experimenting with a whole bunch of different AI approaches. I mean, when she's giving a speech on the stage, often a lot of that is just pre-scripted, although not all. We do some free dialogue back and forth on the stage also. And much of the public dialogue with her is using a relatively simple dialogue system, which is, you could say, the level of a Siri or an Alexa, except with more personality and some physical embodiment. So, I mean, it's not like it's completely clueless about what it's saying, but nor does it have a full understanding of everything it's talking about. Like, I mean, when you ask Sophia, like, what do you think about Ethereum, and she says something, it's likely to be something she's heard somewhere rather than her, like, really understanding how cryptocurrencies work, right? On the other hand, we also use her as a platform for our OpenCog AI engine, which is based on sort of fully understanding what she sees. And there we're dealing with things like, hey, who walked in the door just now? What did they just do? Well, they sat down, right? Like, who were they just talking to? So we're teaching her to understand what she sees and what she hears, and to really hold conversations about what happens in her everyday environment. So you can
understand the context, yeah.
Yeah. So David Hansen sort of calls it an infant thing, that for some things she's more like a little kid, where we're just working on getting her to really connect what she sees and hears and how she moves her arms and head with the language she's saying. And that's sort of fundamental AI research. On the other hand, for commercial purposes, we just want to feed her knowledge base with knowledge so she can hold like useful or amusing conversations. So I mean, if she's in like an Audi car showroom, we just want her to be able to say, hey, this is a great car. It looks like it'll be perfect for your family, right? Even if she doesn't have a full understanding of like exactly how that family is going to use the car or something.
Right.
And I mean, so part of the research challenge in the next few years is for these things to come together.
Right. So not just pattern recognition, but recognizing how different objects or different things are associated with each other. Pretty interesting. So So we're looking to converge all these things together, right? I mean, ultimately, what has to happen is that the AI that's based on advanced understanding and learning ultimately has to subsume the specialized AI that we're using for commercial and entertainment purposes. And, I think we know how to do that from an R&D standpoint. Making it happen, we'll take collaboration of a bunch of different AI researchers and a bunch of resources. And I think with the Singularity Net, we're getting that. So you talked about some of the roles, the different jobs that you have within Hanson Robotics. And I think that's a good point to sort of diverge here and say, in terms of the threat and the opportunity around automation, there's a lot of fear around, job losses and unemployment that's going to be impacted by artificial intelligence generally. But let's start with the positive side. Let's talk about the jobs that you think will be created around artificial intelligence and robotics over the next decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the verge of a next AI revolution. What's happened in the last few years is sort of a narrow AI revolution,
Right.
where we have many different specialized AIs doing all sorts of cool and amazing things, but they're each highly narrow and constrained, right? And I mean, as a result of this, we're not moving in an obvious way toward what I call AGI, artificial
general intelligence. Yeah.
And we're in a situation where, you know, for a customer, for a business to deploy these narrow AIs to serve their goals, it requires a lot of specialized knowledge on the users. So that's is sort of a bottleneck, because if a business isn't a tech business, they have a hard time now finding AI specialists who can help them use the existing narrow AI tools appropriately within their own application software. So yeah, what we're hoping to do and aiming to do with SingularityNet is toward the next AI revolution, which will be an AGI revolution, where we're going to take all these isolated components and network them together and get an AI system that is sort of a meta system with a bunch of different specialized AIs cooperating with each other, and then cooperating with some AI components that have more general learning and reasoning ability.
But it's pretty clear that the incentives to create artificial intelligence are much stronger than the incentives to say, let's hold off on this and take a structured, sort of measured approach to this so that it doesn't impact jobs and society, right? You know, we seem, you know, the same happened with social media, with the internet.
No one's going to stop AI development, because, I mean, there's too much money to be made by rolling out AI in the interest of various businesses, and B, there's just too much near-term good to be done with AI. Like right now, I mean, I was just meeting with the head of education programs for UNESCO, and I mean, she's very eager to see AI curriculum deployed in schools around the world, and you know, AI used to solve problems of the developing world. And I mean, I had another meeting with a cancer researcher. They're very eager to see AI used to sort of glue together all the different results about stem cell therapy and cancer immunotherapy and so forth. So I mean, there's tremendous potential for AI to be helpful to humans, as well as for AI to make money for big and small companies all over. So I mean, honestly, the human race can't even really stop nuclear proliferation very well.
Right.
And nuclear bombs have very few applications beyond blowing people up, right? Whereas AI can make money for so many companies and save so many lives and help so many people that the odds of holding back that development because of theoretical potential threats, like it's just it's not going to happen unless you have like a North Korea style dictatorship or something, which fortunately is not the way the world is going.
Your latest book, The Fourth Age, it's done very well. It's currently doing very well in robotics, artificial intelligence on Amazon, has some great reviews. But in respect to this, we often talk about, in terms of innovation, you hear bandied around terms like the fourth industrial revolution and so forth. But you define the ages of humanity shaped by technology a little differently. You talk about 4 times in history where technology has reshaped humanity. What are the first 3 of those?
The first was when we got language 100,000 years ago, and that's our singular ability as a species. And then 10,000 years ago, we got agriculture. And the reason that was such a big deal is that gave us the city, and the city gave us a division of labor, and that created prosperity. And then the third one was actually a convergence of 2 technologies, writing and the wheel, which coincidentally happened at the same time, but together were the necessary components of nation states. So immediately after those 2 technologies came on the scene, you had all over the world different you had different, in Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia, the Po, Indus, you had these great civilizations emerge because you could promulgate laws and you could collect taxes and all the rest.
Right. So the Sumerians and so forth, right, with the was it Hammurabi text and so forth, right? Yeah. So,
Exactly.
So tell me then about the fourth age, obviously artificial intelligence. You call that conscious computers. Well, you obviously as a branch of AI, obviously we've got machine learning and so forth now, which doesn't necessarily have consciousness. But how do you think this is going to change the world on a global basis? And at a time when we've got pushback against globalization and all of these sorts of things, it would seem like the potential for AI, based on what we've seen the internet already do, that the potential is to really change the way humanity connects on a global basis.
I got into this because I was very confused why the narratives around AI varied so much. Why does Elon Musk is afraid of it, and Stephen Hawking said it could be our last invention, and Bill Gates said he was worried about it. And then you would hear these other people like Zuckerberg and actually a lot of practitioners who said that that was all kind of ridiculous. And I really wanted to write a book that was, why do they disagree? Like, what do they know or believe that makes them different from each other? So I actually wrote a book that doesn't actually tell you what I think. I mean, I don't hide it, but it's not that important. What I try to do is take apart this narrative about automation. Either it's going to take all the jobs, or we're going to have this huge shortage of humans. And I really wanted to understand why there was so many competing narratives that were so radically different, all by presumably, intelligent, informed people. And what I came to understand is that it isn't that those people know different things, it's that they believe different things about the nature of humanity and so forth. And so I wrote a book that explores kind of all the possibilities that could happen. And the first question I ask the reader is, what are you? And the choices I give you are you a machine? Are you completely mechanistic? Or are you an animal, which is kind of a machine that has life or something? Or are you a human, which is somehow an animal with something else? And so depending on your answer to that first question, that explains 80% of the differences in people's views on these questions. So I really wrote a philosophy book disguised as a technology book.
Are you a philosopher? Is that how
Well, I think you can't deal with technologies like this that are like, can a machine think? Like, think about that question. Can a machine think? I mean, we don't really have an answer to that, mainly because we don't have a language around. We've never had to worry about anything thinking other than an animal. So can a machine think? Can a machine understand anything? Can a machine feel anything, or can it only sense things? And that's where consciousness comes in. And again, consciousness is you experience the world. You feel temperature, whereas a computer measures temperature, but you feel warmth. So could a computer ever become conscious? Well, that's both a philosophical question as well as a technical question. And so I kind of go through 8 different theories on where consciousness comes from. In a few of them, machines could, and a few of them, machines couldn't. And again, I try to set it up for the reader where I ask them some questions that allow them to kind of take their own beliefs through it. I didn't want to just be another guy with an opinion telling people they should think like I think. I wanted to really kind of explore the range of the debate, understand all the assumptions behind it, and then discuss the implications. That being said, kind of no matter what happens, artificial intelligence is, I think, going to put us into this thing as big as speech or language. And one of the most telling clues about that is that if 25 years ago the Mosaic browser came out, and if somebody had said, hey, in 25 years, there are going to be billions of people on this thing, what do you think is going to happen? You would have said, well, the yellow pages are going to have problems. You would have said stockbrokers and travel agents, and you would have been right. But what you would never have gotten was Google, eBay, Etsy, Amazon, Airbnb, all of that, $25 trillion in wealth.
Drones delivering packages.
Everything. And it's all simply one technology, which is make computers talk to each other. That's all the internet is. It's just allowing computers to talk to each other. So if you let them talk to each other and you get 1 million new companies and 25 trillion in wealth, what's going to happen if they all start thinking, what if they effectively make everybody on the planet smarter? What if tomorrow we woke up and everybody was essentially 20 IQ points smarter because you had these digital assistants? That's profound. That's game changing.
There is another element of this, which is a systemic thing, but which your data flies in the face of, Byron. But if you look at the macro changes at an industry level, industrial revolution comes along. People move out of agriculture and farming; they move into factories. Right, in the 60s and 70s, with the drive of automation of factories, people move out of factory jobs into white-collar and blue-collar service industry. And now AI is going to attack human process in service industry. What sector do they move into?
Well, that's akin, in my way of seeing things, like asking, okay, the internet 25 years ago is going to get rid of the stockbrokers and the yellow page people and the travel agents. What are they going to do? And the thing is we can't see it. We would have never said, oh, they're going to sell crafts on Etsy, or they're going to, the millions and millions of jobs that you could not have ever even imagined that came out of just connecting computers together. In a way, AI doesn't replace people in the way people think it does. Anybody with a tool that has AI in it becomes effectively a person as smart as that tool. If they can use that tool, their productivity just went up. They don't have to understand how the tool works. They don't have to code it. But if you can give them a tool that has smarts in it, then all of a sudden that is empowering people. That doesn't leave people behind. You mentioned that job test, will a robot take your job? And it asks 10 questions. What
did you get on the test?
I find precious few jobs that technology can completely replace. Very few. If it requires mobility, like my plumber, a robot's not going to be able to do it. If it requires empathy, a robot's not going to be. It's very hard to come up with.
Not in the current state. Yeah.
Right.
But in 20 years.
Well, that is an interesting question. So there's two distinctly different kinds of AI. There's what we know how to do now, which is teach a machine to do one thing, play chess, spot spam email. And then there's this thing that people imagine may be possible.
Task-based machine intelligence.
Correct.
Machine learning, yep.
Some people believe we're going to create a general intelligence, and AI is smart and versatile as a human being. Now, when you hear people say you should be afraid of it, that's what they're talking about. And it's a technology that we don't know how to build. I think that's very clear. Estimates on when we'll build it range between 5 and 500 years, which is kind of telling as well. And many people believe that it is impossible. If you don't believe you're a machine, that's the whole rationale. You are a machine. Your brain is a machine. Everything about you is
a biological machine.
Okay. Therefore, we can build one someday. That's the beginning and the end of the logic. If you believe that, then yeah, we're probably going to build one. It always seems to be 25 years out, though, and it seems to have been 25 years out for a long time. It's a sufficiently far out distance for a futurist to have nobody remember that they said that.
Yeah, well, you know the definition of a futurist, don't you, Byron?
I don't know that one.
It's means never being wrong today.
That's
good one.
Yeah. Spiros, you had a question or statement?
I wanted to ask, do you believe that we will have a painful period of this transition from losing jobs to finding new jobs?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think every advance in these technologies just creates opportunity. When you think about it, all technology does is magnifies human ability. You can move more bricks with a forklift than on your back. Every piece of technology you build that can magnify human productivity will increase wages and will create jobs. The question, and I think the truck driver one, that's this kind of one that people cite, is kind of the least concerning of everything. In fact, truck drivers are facing kind of a demographic disaster. They're aging rapidly, and because everybody's like, there's no future in it, very few people are going into it. And so we're actually going to have this great shortage of truck drivers as far as the eye can see. Even when you have self-driving trucks, you still have to have people involved in all of that. there's a fallacy called the lump of labor fallacy, that there's a finite number of jobs, and if a bunch vanish, then you have unemployment. Well, this isn't true. Jobs can be made up out of thin air the minute you take something, add technology to it, and make something worth more. That's a job. And however much value you added in an hour, that's a wage. And so the reason unemployment never went out of 5 to 10% is not because, we didn't make, big inventions in the past. I mean, the assembly line was artificial intelligence, a frightening kind of artificial intelligence, right? It could take an unskilled worker and they could make a better product cheaper. That's AI. And that didn't cause systemic unemployment. So no.
In fact, it's argued that it created the middle class in the United States, particularly the Model T Ford and so forth, right? Absolutely.
And so we're facing something bigger than that, because we're empowering machines. See, all AI is a really simple idea. Take a bunch of data about the past, study it, look for patterns, make projections about the future. That's all it is. It's nothing mysterious or anything like that. It turns out, though, computers are so good at doing it, that they give people essentially great new abilities. That
There's a purity of it, right? So, hey, listen, we've got about 4 minutes to close. So I just want to, sort of wrap this up, and I want to say a few words about the book in closing. But, the overall assessment from, those that have reviewed the book and the feedback on the book, and my view of it as well, is that you're quite optimistic about the future. So what do you think in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, what are the most optimistic things that we have to look forward to as a result of artificial intelligence?
Technology continues to get better and better. And something that I think comes out of that is that we will eventually solve all technical problems, purely technical problems. Now, there are a lot of problems that aren't purely technical. I mean, there are bad people, right? But there are things that there's no reason they exist. We just haven't figured out how to stop them. So I believe you'll see the end of disease.
Like diseases, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Poverty, I believe, is a technical problem. You don't have to have poor countries. Hunger is a technical problem. There's no reason you have to have hungry people in the world, and all of the rest. And I think that we've had 10,000 years of progress, and to think somehow now that we get these great new abilities, it's going to vanish is just wrong.
No, I don't think we're going to go backwards, but there's another element to this. You talk about the fourth age, but in the two first ages, people didn't work like we work. They didn't do a 40-hour, or if you're Elon Musk, 120-hour working week. Most people spent most of their time just looking for food. So work is a fairly relatively new phenomenon. But so maybe AI will enable us not to have to work in the same way that we do. That'd be positive.
Keynes, 100 years ago, wrote an essay that said, if economic growth continues, and it did, people in the future will only have to work 15 hours. And if you do the math, that's kind of true. If you want to live like people lived in 1930, no air conditioning, 600 square feet, no medical insurance, no vacation, and all of that, you could probably
work
do
15 hours, yeah.
Exactly. But what happened?
But if you want an iPhone every year.
Exactly. We decided.
That's it for this week. If you like the show, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, or share it with a friend, or share it on social media.
We'll see you again next week with more Breaking Banks.